Hello, buddy. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today, of course, is um, today, of course, is today is Friday. All right, today is, of course, Friday, November the 14th, 2025. So, hopefully, everybody's having a good day. This has had a good week. Getting ready for the weekend. Um, as we wait for more people to show up, friendly reminder to everybody, of course, if you guys haven't already, you guys can, like and share the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, anyways, as I said, we're going to just give people a chance to come in before we get started. So, of course, I'm continuing my cartoon watching, as it were, um, here tonight. Um, or I've been continuing my, I'm right now, and of course, we're working my way through August from 1942. Of course, saw the debut appearance or the first appearance of Henry Hawk in The Squawking Hawk, who would, of course, in this first cartoon he was in, he was just going out after just generic chickens. He would, it would be later that he would, of course, be going after Foghorn Leghorn. Um, Also saw Fresh Hair, which is now in public domain. Um, Again, another cartoon from the early day, featuring Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd. Fresh Hair was also the last cartoon to portray Elmer as Fat Elmer. So, um, let's see. All right, well, coming up on 3 minutes here now, so I guess I'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. So, on tonight's show, we're going to, of course, okay, so tonight, as I said, I'm right now been watching, my way through many of the shorts. Right now, I'm working my way through 1942. I know that around the corner, I'm going to be getting a chance to watch Private Snafu. So I figured, since that is the case, Private Snafu, which was a cartoon produced by Warner Brothers, by Chuck Jones and Theodore Geisel, learn a little bit more about. I decided we'll learn a little bit about Private Snafu, a cartoon that was active between 1943 and 1946. We'll find out a little bit more about that. Also, after that, we will get caught up on all the latest in professional wrestling, the moving and shaking going on, particularly between the WWE and TNA. We'll look back to last night's Impact, which did not go over well, and I'll explain why when we get to that point. Um, we'll be also be looking at we'll be looking ahead to tonight's Victory Road. Or let's see, is it Victory? Yeah, I believe it's the Victory Road pay per view tonight, from TNA, as well as SmackDown. As of course they're continuing their build towards um, Survivor Series, and we'll also be, of course, looking ahead to tomorrow night's Collision, and and then we'll be wrapping everything up with this day in each history. So, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started? As I said, we're going to focus in on tonight, learning a little bit about Private Snafu. Let's take a look at who this little guy is. And snafu usually generally means like um like a faux pas or an error, a little mistake. So, and of course, again, a friendly reminder to everybody for both my YouTube and my Rumble viewers. You guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So let's find out. Let's find out a little bit here about Private Snafu. Private Snafu is the title character of a series of black and white American instructional adult animated shorts, ironic and humorous in tone, that were produced between 1943 and 1945 during World War II and voiced by Mel Blanc. The films were designed to instruct service personnel about security, proper sanitation habits, booby traps, and other military subjects, and to improve troop morale. Primarily, they demonstrate the negative consequences of doing things wrong. Now, granted, even though Private Snafu was probably the most prominent of these type of cartoons, I've already seen, in my viewings, of course, some other companies have done. Disney was doing a series of wartime propaganda cartoons for Canada. I was talking about this the other day, particularly with some of our more military YouTuber friends, the comic book guys like Rex and Doc and Apex, talking about when I saw the short about the Mark II boy rifle. But anyways, so let's see how things. So the main character's name is a play on the military slang acronym SNAFU. Yeah, I know that. I know this is something that Doc was telling me when I was asking him about some of this stuff, or when I mentioned it to him the other day. Situation normal, all effed up. Often minced as all fouled up. Yeah. So where, basically to clean it up a bit. The series was directed by Chuck Jones and other prominent Hollywood animators. So background. So here's the background. Of course, Chuck Jones is the guy who was the main director of it, among others. So let's see. Among some of the other directing talent, including Fritz Frayling, Bob Clampett, Frank Tashlin, George Gordon. The writers included Theodore Geisel. Now, Theodore Geisel, that name might not sound as familiar. You probably know him better by his pseudonym, or his pen name, Dr. Seuss. So, Phil Eastman and Monroe Leaf, with, of course, produced by Leon Schlesinger and Edward Seltzer, with Mel Blanc providing the voices, Carl Starling doing the music, and these were, of course, produced by Warner Brothers Cartoons and distributed for the U.S. Army. About 4 minutes, 4 minutes running time on average, and ran from June 28, 1943 through 1946. All right, so that's the basic information. So let's get into the background now, the background of these cartoons, these shorts. The character was created by director Frank Capra, chairman of the U.S. Army Air Force, 1st Motion Picture Unit. And most shorts were written by Theodore Dr. Seuss Geisel, who we just talked about, Philip D. Eastman, and Monroe Leaf. Although the United States Army gave Walt Disney the first crack at creating the cartoons, Leon Schlesinger of Warner Brothers Cartoons underbid Disney by 2/3 and won the contract. Disney had also demanded exclusive ownership of the character and merchandising rights. Snafu was designed by Art Heinemann, the same man who soon redesigned Woody Woodpecker. Woody Woodpecker, of course, of Walter Lantz Productions fame. Let's see. All right, so as we get ready to continue on here with this little walk down history lane here, in terms of the animation side of it. The goal would help enlisted men with weak literacy skills to learn through animated cartoons and also supplementary comic books. So basically, Private Snafu was put together for those soldiers who maybe weren't avid readers or whose reading skills may have been a little underdeveloped, and so they could probably get whatever, like, because they even said up here they talked about many different like situations, like films were designed to instruct service personnel about security, proper sanitation habits, booby traps, and other military subjects, and to improve troop morale. So that was the whole goal there. They featured simple language, racy illustrations, mild profanity, and subtle moralizing. Private Snafu did, in parentheses, almost everything wrong, so that his native example taught basic lessons about secrecy, disease prevention, and proper military protocols. Private Snafu cartoons were a military secret for the armed forces only. So when they originally came out, they were not distributed to the general public. Obviously, we can now watch them today because obviously for many reasons. One, much of the information has probably been changed, and there were probably some things back then that would still hold true today, like from the sanitation aspect of it. But it's not like, if somebody was to watch a Private Snafu cartoon today, they'd be finding out anything about current U.S. military stuff. So surveys to ascertain the soldiers' film favorite showed that the Snafu cartoons usually rated highest or second highest. Each cartoon was produced in 6 weeks. The shorts were classified government documents. Martha Segal, employed at the ink and paint department, recalled that government security measures imposed on the staff working on them. They had to be fingerprinted and given FBI security clearances. They also had to wear identification badges at work. Workers at the ink and paint department were given only 10 cells at a time in an effort to prevent them from figuring out the story content. So basically they wanted to make sure that if spies did somehow infiltrate this process, that they didn't get enough information out there to hamper them. And again, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. And that'd be, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Of course, I would love to hear, I'd love to hear, like from, if like Apex or Doc or or Rex or any of our crew who's actually been in the military. If you guys want to chime in the chat, feel free to do so. On some of this stuff here. Um, so, so the name Private Snafu comes from the unofficial military acronym SNAFU. Situation normal, all effed up. With the opening narrator in the first cartoon merely hinting at its unusual message as situation normal, all fouled up. Now again, snafu, you know, even though it's a military acronym, there was a time there where I think it did also come to be known among non-military personnel, everyday citizens as well. You have a snafu, it's um, usually some kind of foul up or what have you. So, anyways, so content, content. The shorts did not have to be submitted for approval at the Production Code Administration, and so were not subject to the Motion Picture Production Code. As such, when these cartoons were originally produced, as they said, they were produced exclusively for the military personnel. So they were not. So they did not obviously have to be subject to the rules of the Hays Code and all that. So most of the Private Snafu shorts um, are educational, and although the War Department had to approve the storyboards, the Warner directors were allowed great latitude in order to keep the cartoons entertaining, which is good. I mean, obviously, you want to have the greatest impact possible, and if you have soldiers that while they're watching this are like, oh, starting to fall asleep to it, then that might be a bit of a problem, to say the least. So through his irresponsible behavior, Snafu demonstrates to soldiers what not to do while at war. You almost have to wonder if what might have happened. Okay, so I'm sure everybody has seen. I think most of us have seen MASH at some point, right? The dramedy from the 70s, early 80s, with Alan Alda, Alan Alda, Wayne Rogers, McLean Stevenson, Harry Morgan, Mike Farrell, the like. But we talk a lot of I wonder what might have happened if, let's say, Klinger had watched one of these Private Snafu, if he had decided to just go in a total another direction of just being a total snafu, rather than going around trying to get out of the army by just by trying to get out of the army in drag, basically. I barely remember MASH. Well, MASH is on MeTV. So and a few other, I think, nostalgia channels. So and it has been syndicated, pretty much for the last 40 years or so, 45 years. So. Anyways, as we kind continue on here. Let me just check where we're at on time here. And I think we're right on time, it looks like. Should probably hurry along a little bit here. All right, so through his oh yeah, we saw that. Okay. In Private Snafu versus Malaria Mike, for example, Snafu neglects to take his malaria medications or to use his repellent, allowing a suave mosquito to get him in the end. Literally. Oh, meaning that mosquito probably just went right for his rear end. Talk about getting a shot. In Gas Snafu, in Gas, Snafu throws away his gas mask and is almost killed by poison gas. In Spies, Snafu leaks classified information a little at a time until the Axis enemies piece it together, ambush his transport ship, and literally blow him to hell. Okay. Six of that must be something. He finds himself in hell and then probably finds Satan sticking his trident up as you know what. 6 of Snafu's shorts actually end with him being killed due to his stupidity. Spies blown up by enemy submarine torpedoes. Booby traps blown up by a bomb hidden inside a piano. The gold brick run over by an enemy tank. A lecture on camouflage. Large enemy bomb lands on him. Private Snafu versus Malaria Mike, Malaria. And going home, run over by a streetcar. Yeah, Snafu doesn't really sound like a very bright soldier. You would think that they would have drummed him out of the army for being so stupid. Right? Let's see. 9 of the Snafu shorts feature a character named Technical Fairy First Class. The Technical Fairy is a crass, unshaven, cigar-smoking miniature GI whose fairy wings bear the insignia of a technical sergeant. Now, technical sergeant, I believe, is technical. Well, so even though these were produced for the Army, they're Army Air Corps, so the Air Force. Technical sergeant, I believe, is, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here. You got technical sergeant, I think, is E7 in the Air Force. An E7 pay grade there, right? So, but if they can correct me if I misremembered that. And who wears only socks, shorts, and a uniform hat. When he appears, he grants Snafu's wishes, most of which involve skipping protocol or trying to do things the quick and sloppy way. The results typically end in disaster, with the technical fairy teaching Snafu a valuable lesson about proper military procedure. For example, in the 1944 cartoon, Snafuperman. What's this? Private Snafu supposed to be like Superman or something like that? Snafuperman. That sounds pretty funny. The technical fairy transforms Private Snafu into the superhero Snafuperman, who takes bungling to a superpowered level through his carelessness. Oh my god! Oh, the Bizarro before Bizarro. Ay, 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 ay. Let's see. Later in the war, however, Snafu's antics became more like those of fellow Warner character Bugs Bunny, a savvy hero facing the enemy head on. The cartoons were intended for an audience of soldiers as part of the bi-weekly Army-Navy Screen Magazine newsreel, and so are quite risque by 1940s standards, with minor cursing, bare-bottomed GIs, and plenty of scantily clad and even semi-nude women. The depictions of Japanese and Germans are hostile comic par for the course in wartime U.S. So basically, now I think another thing that would keep at least the Private Snafu cartoons off of, aside from, of course, the material we talked about, the more mature content aspect of it. Obviously, these cartoons are probably not necessarily made for kids. You know, even though something tells me, and again, I haven't watched any of the Private Snafu yet, so they had full immunity. Did Joza, have you actually watched Private Snafu? Have you actually watched Private Snafu already? I've seen some of them. All right, all right. So but again, as we were saying, these are not probably cartoons that were made for kids. Even though I have noticed on some of the on some of the cartoon collection, I guess DVDs, that of course they also have them on the on demand here on my Fire Stick as well. Um, they 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 do have some of the Private Snafu cartoons on there. I myself have not seen them yet, but um, anyways, the Snafu shorts are notable because they were produced during the golden age of Warner Brothers Animation. Oh yeah, another thing about Private Snafu is they probably wouldn't be shown on television as much either because of the fact of the racial ethnic stereotypes and some of the characters they would use for that were considered appropriate for the situation and the time they were in, but not now because obviously things have changed since then. Directors such as Chuck Jones, Fritz Frayling, Bob Clampett, and Frank Tashlin worked on them, and their characteristic styles are in top form. P.D. Eastman was a writer and storyboard artist for the Snafu shorts. Voice characterizations were provided by the celebrated Mel Blanc. Private Snafu's voice was similar to Blank's Bugs Bunny characterization, and Bugs himself actually made cameos in Snafu episodes Gas and Three Brothers. All right, so toward the end of the war, other studios began producing Snafu shorts as well. In parentheses, the Army accused Schlesinger of padding his bills. Though some of these were never filmed before the war ended. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera of MGM Cartoons notably planned to direct a Snafu short before production was canceled prior to filming. Now, obviously, with the end of the war and with a lot of these soldiers going home, you know, probably kind of negated the necessity to have these shorts continue to be produced. So, that and oh, they weren't made for kids at all. Yeah, they were made for the soldiers. That and content, and then I believe Private Snafu was never shown on TV due to content. Yeah. Well, yeah. Today it wouldn't just be content. Content was probably the primary reason back then, but content and the um, racial stereotypes in it. If it did get shown on TV, there'd probably be some kind of disclaimer on it, like you see in some of these Golden Age cartoons that you see today. Um, Anyway, we continue on here. Let's see. All right. The Snafu films are also partly responsible for keeping the animation studios open during the war. By producing such training films, the studios were declared an essential industry, which meant, of course, that they were, that the government kept them open. The character has since made a couple of brief cameos. The Animaniacs episode Boot Camping has a character looking very much like Private Snafu, and the Futurama episode quote unquote I Dated a Robot showed Private Snafu on the building mounted video screen for a few seconds in the opening credits. While Private Snafu was never officially a theatrical cartoon character, when the series was launched in 1943 with the debut short Coming Snafu, directed by Chuck Jones, on parentheses, a proto-Snafu does appear, unnamed and in color, in Jones's cartoon The Draft Horse, released theatrically 1 year earlier on May 9th, 1942. Yeah, I think I did just recently watch that cartoon. This appearance would serve as the basis for Snafu's character in the series. The 24th film of the series, Going Home, produced in 1945, was never released. The premise is, what damage could be done if a soldier on leave talks too much about his unit's military operations? In the film, Snafu discusses a quote-unquote secret weapon with his girlfriend, which was unnervingly, in parentheses, and unintentionally similar to the atomic bombs under development. In 1945, a series of cartoons for the Navy featuring Private Snafu's brother, Tarfu, for things are really effed up, in parentheses there, was planned, but only one short, produced by Harmonizing Productions, was released when war came to a close. Private Snafu meets Seaman Tarfu in the Navy. Availability. Where can we, I guess, how can we find Private Snafu cartoons if we did want to watch them? As now declassified work of the United States government, all private snafu shorts are in the public domain and are thus freely available in numerous places, including on YouTube and Internet Archive. Yeah, as they were like training films, just like the Canadian training films that I've been watching of late as well. Warner Home Video has begun including private snafu shorts as bonus material on their Looney Tunes Golden Collection. Other commercial DVDs are available from Thunderbeam Animation, who released a DVD containing all the Snafu cartoons entitled Private Snafu Golden Classic and Bosco Video. The Private Snafu shorts were released on Blu-ray on November 19, 2015 by Thunderbeam. At least one of the Private Snafu shorts was used as an exhibit piece. The short Spies was used for the World War II exhibit at the International Spy Museum. Let's see. Impact on children. I think they do get into the filmography here after this. We'll just conclude with the impact on children's literature. So, what impact did Private Snafu have on children's literature? Let's find that out. According to a post-war study of the Snafu cartoons, the wartime experiences of authors Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss, Philip D. Eastman, and Munro Lee shaped their successful post-war children's books, especially the use of simple language and some of the themes. Dr. Seuss wrote The Cat in the Hat in 1957 because Geisel believed the widely used Dick and Jane primers were too boring to encourage children to read. Yeah. The Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham, the Horton series of books, the Who's. Geisel, Eastman, and Leaf authored books designed to promote personal responsibility, conservation, and respect for multiculturalism. Some racial characterizations are considered questionable today. Geisel's characters were often portrayed as rebels who displayed independence of mind. Eastman's characters, on the other hand, typically embraced the wisdom of authority figures, and Lee's heroes were in between and seemed more ambiguous toward independence and authority. All right, so that's as much of that. If you guys want to find out, you guys can go research on your own, find out all the, if you guys want to go track down the private snafu shorts. They even said they're on YouTube and Internet Archive. So, but yeah, so that took a good 40 minutes. Or actually, I guess it would be like about 35 minutes, I guess, because I did start 5 minutes into the show. So, alrighty then. So, with that being said, now we're going to move on to, of course, a wrestling wrap up. As we do have quite a bit of news. We had some interesting news coming out of both WWE and AEW. So let me at least mention that part of it first. As I'm just getting. So from what has been put out there, it looks like WWE decided to buy out the remainder of Joe Hendry's TNA contract. considering that Joe Hendry had considerable amount of time still on his TNA contract, and the WWE wanted through their working partnership. The last month or two here, Joe Hendry has been appearing more and more on NXT, and the WWE sees great promise in him. So it looks like WWE bought out his contract, and now he'll be exclusively a WWE guy now, no longer working in TNA. And speaking of that aspect of it, going ahead and taking a look back to last night's Impact. On last night's Impact from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida, it was live. The opening match saw Danny Luna defeat Indy Hartwell by a disqualification, which, from what I understand, which will lead to a rematch between them two. We'll tell you more about that. Cedric Alexander Prime defeated Jason Hotch in a singles match in about 3.5 minutes. Kalani Jordan retained the TNA Knockouts World title over Heather by Elegance of the Elegance brand. Mike Santana defended the TNA World title twice. First out defending it against Ryan Nemeth, with it ending in a no contest with just under 2 minutes. And then Frankie Kazarian came out to cash in his gauntlet contract, ended up defeating Mike Santana for the title. This title change is received. So the two title matches went for a grand total of, 1 minute 54 plus 54. 2 minutes 48 seconds. Two title matches that lasted a grand total of 2 minutes 48 seconds. Aside from that, there's other reasons. Many fans did not like this booking. They did not like this booking. Santana had just won the title back at Bound for Glory, and then they all of a sudden take it off of him. I mean, that's not something that's, considering they have not really been building towards tonight's pay-per-view a whole lot as well. It doesn't help things much either. So now, one of the other things I forgot to mention too, Ring of Honor had its show last night at Honor Club last night. Let's take a look at what happened on Honor Club last night before we move on to tonight. So on last night's Honor Club, opening up the show in 6-man tag action, Dalton Castle teamed with. Oh, by the way, last night's Ring of Honor Club took place at the Bayou Music Center in Houston, Texas, with Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni on commentary. So on the opening match, saw Dalton Castle and the Outrunners defeat the team of Warren Johnson, Zach Mason, and Savage King. And then in the tag team match, the Don Callis family members of Hechicero and Rocky Romero defeated the Spanish Announce Project of Angelico and Serpentico. In women's tag team match, Athena, Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Athena and Billy Starks defeated the team of Heian and Maya World. In another tag team match, the Swirl of Blake Christian and Lee Johnson defeated the team of Will Alday and Vin Parker. Lance Archer of the Don Callis family defeated Aaron Solo in a singles match in just over 3 minutes. In a mixed 8-man tag match, the team of Skyflight of Scorpio Sky, the Martin brothers, Darius and Dante and Darius Martin and Layla Gray defeated the faction of M&M TV, Johnny TV, Manstorm, Mason Madden, and Taya Valkyria. And in the main event, in the Proving Ground match for a chance at the Pure title, Lee Moriarty was able to fend off the challenge of Willie Mack who was trying to earn a shot at the pure title. So that's all that happened on last night's show. Now taking a look ahead to tonight's. One other piece of news I didn't mention earlier too on the WWE side. It looks like they're also interested in possibly signing Danhausen, the AEW star. Now, don't know what Danhausen's contract situation with AEW is. Is he still? Last I knew, he was still, even though AEW has not used him in quite some time, whether or not they're still interested in holding on to him, nobody knows. You do have people in the company like CM Punk who are also looking to bring Danhausen in, as CM Punk and Danhausen have a pretty good relationship, friendship going. But look like WWE may be looking to sign. And also, of course, there's rumors too that Chris Jericho's contract will be coming up with AEW at the end of next month and should be making his WWE return at this upcoming January's Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. So now with that all being said, well, hello there. SBG3 Epic. I'm just going to call you Epic. Hello? Yeah, I saw you. I just now saw you, of course. I don't know if I'm the only one here. No, I'm also here. Well, it's good to see people are starting to talk now, finally. MK. All right. So, anyways, as we now with all that being said, of course, now let's look ahead to tonight's, some of the stuff going on tonight. First off, I'm going to look at some of the stuff so prior to it's Turning Point, not Victory Road. Prior to tonight's Turning Point on YouTube, from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida, with Tom Hannafan and Matthew Rainwell on commentary. There was a triple threat match on the Countdown show that pitted the Hometown Man against Jake something and against Mance Warner. So that was on the pre-show, and then on the main show itself on Turning Point, tonight's Turning Point, as soon as I can find that. On tonight's Turning Point, which of course Tom Hannafan and Matthew Rainwalt will be, Kalani Jordan will be defending the TNA Knockouts World title against M by Elegance, trying to avenge the loss that Heather took on tonight's Impact. BDE looks to get some revenge on AJ Francis, as he was put through a table by AJ Francis on last night's Impact, and will look to get some revenge facing him in the ring tonight. As a result of the DQ in their match from last night, Danny Luna and Indy Hartwell will face each other one more time here in a no DQ match. In a match for the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team titles, a three-way match in which the Inspiration of Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay will be defending against both teams of Tessa Blanchard and Victoria Crawford, and the Angel Warriors of Sarah Brookside and Lei Ying Lee. In an 8-man tag team match, the Rascals will team with a mystery partner. So Rascals of Trey Miguel, Myron Reed, and Zachary Wentz will team with a mystery partner to take on the System of course, of Eddie Edwards, JDC, Brian Myers, and Moose. And then in a 6-man tag match, Cedric Alexander will be teaming with the Hardys, the current TNA World Tag Team Champions, Jeff and Matt Hardy, to face off against Order 4 of Mustafa Ali and the Great Hands of Jason Hotch and John Schuyler. Leon Slater defends the TNA X Division title against the returning Rich Swann. And in a triple threat match for the TNA World and International titles, Frankie Kazarian will be defending the world title against Steve Macklin, who will, aside from going after the world title, will also be defending the international title in the match, and Nick Nemeth. Now, initially, this match was supposed to be a tag team match between Kazarian and Nemeth on one side and Macklin and Mike Santana on the other. Santana has apparently been taken out of the match. And, of course, also with what happened with the... Now, that would lead to some speculation. Maybe did Santana get hurt somehow? Maybe in the match again, because Santana's matches, not only did he lose the title to Frankie Kazarian, but both of his matches last night were short. I have to wonder if maybe going into last night's Impact, Mike Santana may have been injured, and that's why they had to take the title off of him. So that might explain a few things. But again, I'm sure we'll probably find out from the speaking of that, I've been getting more into sports lately. Let's see. I'm not into sports. Oh, that's fine. I'm mostly really into WWE, but that seems well. If you're into WWE, then you might know that WWE has also been kind of developing interpromotional working agreements with other promotions. TNA here in the States, AAA down in Mexico. I believe they've also got some kind of working agreements. I know they have a working agreement with Pro Wrestling Noah over in Japan, and maybe also with the women's promotion Marigold over there as well. In fact, I know that I think Io Sky recently, about a month ago, went back to Japan to take on Mayu Iwatani in a show with Marigold. Anyways, so that's all that's going down on TNA. So let's take a look at what's going down on Friday Night SmackDown as they're continuing to build towards SummerSlam in a couple weeks here. Let's see, 2 weeks from tomorrow, in fact. On the USA Network tonight, WE will be coming from the MVP Arena in Albany, New York. Michael Cole and Corey Graves on commentary. So as part of the Last Time Is Now tournament, to see who will be John Cena's final opponent at next month's Saturday night's main event, you have The Miz will be taking on Jey Uso tonight, and LA Knight will be taking on a mystery opponent. Some people argued that could possibly be Joe Hendry as a possibility. In a match for the United States title, Ilya Dragunov will be defending the title against Axiom of the Team Fraxium. In a non-title match, WWE Women's Champion Jade Cargill will be taking on B-Fab. And the main event will see Cody Rhodes defending the undisputed WWE title against Bronson Reed of the Vision. So that's all that's going down on SmackDown tonight. Now to look ahead to tomorrow night's Collision. Talk about what's going to be going down on tomorrow night's Collision. Let's see. Coming off of Wednesday night's Blood and Guts Dynamite event. So on tomorrow night's Collision, which will air on TNT, coming from the Erie Insurance Arena in Erie, Pennsylvania. The one match that's signed thus far is the Conglomeration's Mark Briscoe. Will be taking on the Don Callis family members, Mark Davis. So there we go with that. So that's all we got on the wrestling wrap-up. And I will, of course, go over the results from the weekend here on Monday when we come back from that. But now, with that being done and said, as the wrestling we wind up the wrestling wrap-up. Now we're gonna, of course, with today being Friday, November the 14th, 2025. Let's go ahead and take a look back at this day in each history. So let's see. 85, 2015, all right, so first off, I'm going to head back 40 years ago. And on this date, 40 years ago today, back in 1985, as part of the post-crisis repackaging, the first issue of the second volume of Aquaman went on sale in newsstands on this date 50 years ago today. Not 50, I'm sorry, 40 years ago today. Sold for 75 cents for 32 pages. The story was titled "The Rise and Fall of Atlantis," as written by Neil J. Posner, penciled by Craig Hamilton, Steve Montano doing the inking, lettering done by Bob LaPon, and Joe Orlando doing the coloring. So on this date in the year 1985, the first issue of the second volume of Aquaman, the post-crisis edition, went on sale on this date 40 years ago. Aquaman is one of my favorite characters outside the OOC Object Show community. Object Show. Also, the chats are delayed. I realize that. Object Show community. All right. So, anyways, getting ready to move on to the next piece of niche history as we move ahead to the year. We move ahead to the year 2000. On this date in the year 2000, being released direct to video by Big Idea Media. Big Idea Media. The American science fiction computer animated children's television series 321 Penguins would be a direct to video release on this date back in 2000, 25 years ago today. Initially launched as a direct to video episode, Big Idea Entertainment's 321 Penguins would debut on this date 25 years ago, back in the year 2000. All right, and finally, as soon as I clear all this out, of course, finally on this date in the year, we move ahead to on this date in the year 2015, 10 years ago today, four-time AWA world champion, and of course, WWE Hall of Famer Nick Bockwinkel passed away on this date 10 years ago at the age of 80. So Nick Bockwinkel, of course, was a stalwart of the Minnesota-based American Wrestling Association in the late 70s, early 80s. Had several matches with the likes of Vern Gagne, Hulk Hogan, Kurt Hennig. But on this date, and also had a legendary tag team with the Crippler Ray Stevens as the Blonde Bombers. But on this date, 10 years ago today, passed away at the age of 80. All right, so with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here this Sunday, where my co-host will be Rex Christian from Double Flyer Momentum. We'll be taking another trip down Comics History Lane, looking back to comics that went on sale from Dell Comics. And then we'll be, of course, back here on Monday with more Needs News. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. And I hope to see everybody back here on Sunday. Bye.